Tanga so Jibindi the Tungu Laji about them to Marburova. Jibindi the Tungu Laji about the La Samba Jam with the Samba Chibitsi, the La Lukusa was. Ta Samba Jam with the La Tabatin, Yujiba, the Jibitani, the Jibitala, and then Dunga to Kunuk and the Samba, the Yala Junior and Samba Niji, Dunga to Kunuk and Samba, the Latuda Queen, Yemeta, Kunuk Queen, Juri Sambani. Dune Queen, Yemesamba, Dune Deji, Thomas Mumbi, Gubatan, Dunga Gungo, Niji, Dunga Gungo, the Latin, Dunga J, Dunga Two, Dunga Song, Water Ta, Taniba Kunuka,
So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically in the section on training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So when we look at that from the perspective of an outline, we see that there are the headings of first the mental training, and then a second category, which is the measure of the determination to be free, or the attitude, which is one that wishes to definitely emerge, or renunciation. And then the third category of dispelling misconceptions, and then a fourth category of ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So these are the four major headings in the outline in that section. And then when we begin with the actual mental training, we find that there are two categories that under the heading of mental training. First, the identifying the mind intent on liberation. Again, that's the mind that has renunciation. And then the second category, which is the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So when we get to that second category, which is the method for developing the mind intent on liberation, we'll find there are two categories there. Reflection on suffering and its origin, and then reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 dependent originations. So that first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, there are two categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then the second category, reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So the first category, reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, we find two categories there. First category showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting that the truth of the suffering is the first of the Four Noble Truths. And then we have a second category, which is the actual meditation on suffering. So under that category of the actual meditation on suffering, we find the universal suffering and the specific sufferings, and then we found those categories that we've gone over of the reflection on the 8 types of suffering, reflection on the 6 types of suffering, reflection on the 3 types of suffering. So we've gone through and completed those parts. So now we move on to reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So that's where we're going to start today. Gonjo.
Ta Kunyu Gonzabatro.
Lessa.
Ta Kunyu Gonzabatel Tamarve, Yomobachi to Lesu to Chipawat, Jewalabitus.
Lessa.
Ta Yomobachi to and Yomobado Kanaka Chigres and Chi to then a Lesu to and then Yomo Uncle and then Lugile Tangakila to substitute countries. Then let the Yomo call Joalene and Chipawat Joalem to what is not let Sarva.
Yeah. So now we're dealing with the section that the major heading now is reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. And there's 3 categories that are under that. First, how the afflictions arise. So this is showing exactly how the afflictions within our continuum manifest, how they arise. The second category of how you thereby accumulate karma. So how as a result of that, you accumulate karma through your body, you accumulate karma through your speech, and you accumulate karma through your mind. So then we have how you accumulate karma. And then this third category is how you die and are reborn. So if you're within cyclic existence, you die and then are born again. Being a human in cyclic existence, you die and are reborn. So how does that occur? So these are the three categories under that major heading of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. It's good if we can look at the outline itself when we're dealing with these in order to understand it better. So we have, again, under the major heading of reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin, we have those three categories. First, how the afflictions arise. Second, how you thereby accumulate karma. And then third, how you die and are reborn. So the first category, how the afflictions arise, we find four categories. First, the identification of the afflictions. Second category, the order in which they arise. A third category of the causes of the afflictions. And then the fourth category, which is the faults of the afflictions. So we have those four categories. And then when we begin with the first category, which is identifying the afflictions, we find two things. First, the general definition of afflictions, and then second, we have the more specific individual definitions of the afflictions. So the first kind of general definition, which is the definition of just affliction, is a phenomena that when it arises is disturbing in character, and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. So here we find the definition of the general definition of affliction. And then after that we get into the 10 definitions of the specific afflictions. And the first 5 are called the viewless afflictions. So that's attachment, hostility, pride, ignorance, and doubt. And then the next 5 are called the afflictions that are view. And those are the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, an extremist view, a belief in the supremacy of wrong views, a belief in the supremacy of ethics and of ethics and religious discipline. And then 10th, which is wrong view. So these are all called afflictions that are view, because in dependence upon this, the others occur, and we react negatively. So in dependence upon these views, we react, and then these other 5, which are viewless afflictions, arise. So let's see, is that everything? Good, Digsung Rinpoche. Jew, okay. That's okay, so now if everyone wants to turn to page 301 in the English Lamrim. we find the section called The Causes of the Afflictions. And in there, we'll find there's a six-fold presentation. So we have first basis, second object, third social context, fourth explanation, fifth habituation, and sixth attention. So this is the six-fold presentation of the causes of afflictions.
This way.
Where is this?
That you be dance at you do what? Don't dance at what the you move you drug on don't dance at the and then you move bacha the low waters, you move bacha. And the Shiba can go bacha waters. Miki Shiba, Nai Shiba, Hai Shiba, Ji Shiba, Luji Shiba, Samal bacha waters, Mishik bacha, Nai Shibi bacha, what he Onshik bacha, Yishik bacha, then Gi bacha. Magi bacha, Lumateng bacha, bacha moja waters, bacha takande, Yumuba, and then Yumuba what Zanyu to the Nenu, and then Yumuba what they tongue of the Taminga to do Ganu Dulangalo, what should be said, and then Sazambajena, whatever. Yom Bacha to Kunji in Japanese, Kunji says you are this, Kunji second, Joa Toma Mabanu again, Talamang, Romatan, Shiva Tempeship you are this.
The Nalama, okay.
And then Talamang, you do Lumares, Talamang is, and the Kua de Duta you are this, and the T to Gishibi Bacha there. Didi Diore, Magi Shibi Bacha Didi Diore, Lumating Bacha Galo, and Didi to Jaguars, Bacha Kunjas of Jin, Kunjis, what is a marva?
Lesso.
Kunjis is a word,
Lesso.
Kunjit in Javaris,
Lesso.
Palanis said what things are.
Lesso. When we go to the first cause, we see basis. It says refers to the latent proclivity for the afflictions. When we speak of imprints, or this is latent proclivity, but this is referring to imprints. When we speak of imprints, there are imprints of consciousness, there are imprints of sense powers, there are imprints of our virtue, there are imprints of non-virtue, there are imprints of neutral, or those things that are not presented in Scripture. So these, there are imprints of all of these things, so these latent proclivities. In the mind-only school, there is an assertion that there is an actual storehouse consciousness, which is the actual place where these imprints are stored from lifetime to lifetime. And they aren't considered direct perception. They are considered the consciousness that which it is perceived but not ascertained. Let me just check that. Perceived but not ascertained. So they don't consider that a direct perception. It's considered this other category. But the reason it's called this name, this storehouse name, is because it is an actual storing place according to that school. And this is something that's specific to that school, a storing place for these actual imprints. I'm just going to look up and make sure that... awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained. So it was correct. Just want to double check that. So, Namgyal Monastery. Okay, Dixon.
That Omar Raju Baba Bebe Kalas, Omar Raju Tuzuke, and the Shiba to Zangar, the Pasha to Gabajarasana, Chenrezig is now she comes out, is never you orders, teaching genres.
Namshe.
Each Nashi, Kazak Chenrezig, Kaza Yimbi each of you orders. What they told Pasha genres. What the Lord will task it on the moment or Raju Batal Junior order. until on the sensible
So, and then the Baba Veka in the Middle Way Autonomy School states that the imprints then are placed in the mental consciousness, the Yichinabasheba, the Shagadu. They abide in the mental consciousness. But there is a way to harm this view. So there's a lot of debate that takes place as to these points of where the storage of this is. The mind-only school asserts there's this specific consciousness, this storehouse consciousness itself, which is this this consciousness which is where it appears but not ascertained. So the Middle Way Consequence School states that the latent proclivities or the imprints are abide. The word abide is kind of tricky, but are placed or stay. If you were asked where do they stay or abide in the Middle Way Consequence School, the answer is the person, the I. So the being, the I.
Ta Chenrezig Gujitalo to Goar Shebe Gojila, Galamot Shubis, Jabin Bowos, Pachas against the Nijawuris, Goa Shebasana, one shit and shit to Gojet, Pacha Yaking, Sheba the Hins of Gojet, one shit and shit to Pacha Jagoro,
one shade, okay,
Pacha Yaking Shebatrua,
Gojet,
Goa Shebe. Gojilas, Gojisana Sandabaji Gojinashi, Raju Bajina, Senji Jinashi, Umatanju Vajina Nasanti Jani, the Jabi Nubajila Pacha Lagres, Goa Shebi Gojilan Galango Shubise, Jabi Nubawus, what the Jermis Kunjun.
So the mind-only school states there's a storehouse consciousness. The Middle Way Autonomy school states that these abide in the mental consciousness. And in Jade Rinpoche, the Bechagare?
Kunji Bacha, Kunji Tangasu, Kunji Nashi, Chenji Nashi, Kunji Nada Shebi, and Pecha Root Nuno Jure. And the teen Jabba the Pechi Shuku Jazz, Kunji Kandi Lagre, Jimmy Sawajit and Jabani, Kunji.
So in the a text called the Storehouse Consciousness, it's about 100 leaflets by J. Rinpoche. We find this point made about the Middle Way Consequence School, that it is the possessor of this consciousness and sense powers that is the that houses or is the place where these abilities abide. So these abilities, meaning the imprints have these abilities. So where does this imprint that has an ability abide? It abides in the possessor of the consciousness and sense powers, where the imprints can be created by. So, yeah, that's the best way to put it. Diksun.
Tagi Bacha in the Lomaten, Mugi Bacha Karina, Sama Lomaten is Bacha in the Lomaten Bichos. Juji Gusu Kaya, Jab Bacha Lomatens. Bacha Jakin de Gawai Gi Sheba in and Magi Sheba, Lomaten Sheba Kari in Baina, Jab Bacha the Lomaten Matu, Jenda Yomares, Gumuku Karudu Marubichu, or the Bacha in the Lomaten Charles.
Okay.
What this one you are?
The guy Okay, and in the same text we find that it states that if it is an imprint, so imprint could be a virtuous imprint, a non-virtuous imprint, a imprint which that has not been presented in scripture or neutral. No matter what, if it is an imprint, it is necessarily that which has not been presented in scripture, so neutral. When we're looking at categorizing, it goes into that category. So if it's an imprint, even if it's a virtuous imprint or non-virtuous imprint, or a neutral imprint, it goes into this category of neutrality, or that which hasn't been presented in scripture.
Ta bacha paji jaba yina nga tun de salta wa yina nyogu ngobi chikro. Nyogu ngobi che dun de yo marota. De dun ngobi re sarwa. what the new home of the jungle and day chow and new budget was new. What the Nigel Shiba to Gan to new what the Nigel Bachala do.
So the way to understand this is by way of an example. So we have a seed that we plant, and then the seed, within the seed, from the seed we have the arisal of a sprout, but the sprout isn't abiding in the seed, just the potential for it, the ability to be produced is abiding in that seed, and then the sprout occurs. Likewise, once the consciousness itself stops or ceases, there's an imprint that consciousness leaves, whatever it is, the consciousness, there's an imprint that consciousness leaves, and that imprint stays in the form of a potential or an ability. So it just abides there, like the seed has within it this ability or potential to give rise to a sprout. This imprint abides as a potential, or that which can give rise to whatever, as translators note, is concordant with it, whatever that imprint would give rise to, be it virtuous, happy, non-virtuous suffering. So that was a translator's note. So it abides in a state of potential or ability. Khensur Rinpoche. Let's look at the Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise on the stage of the path. Nija Jonga. Nija. Sunju Yomari, bro. Nija Sunju. Sunju. Nija Sunju Sunga. Sunju Sunga.
In the world, Abbot Dua. Yomobi Jun Trules, Yomobi Jun Trule Ando.
Yandri Suranan?
Nija Junga, Sunju Sunga, Sumba Yomobi Jun Trules Ando.
Yeah, Sumba Yomobi, JP Jew.
Jun Trules.
Nidrule.
What
so we're going 301, the fourth category, the faults of the afflictions.
Yomobi Jun Trules.
Lesso.
Jun Trule.
Danny Yomobi.
Then Yomobi Balanetos. Then Yomobi Balanetos. So Dangazo Pasha Shedia to the Marbe.
Lesso. So the cause. I apologize. Number 3, my fault. Going back up to 3, the causes of the afflictions. There are sixfold. These are sixfold as presented in the Bodhisattva levels. First, basis refers to the latent proclivity for afflictions. So this is number 1 of the causes of afflictions. Pacha.
And then also the Pacha Shecho, you can Sulan Dosha Shecho, you go there. Country Pacha Shecho, you can Sulu Country Pacha, Country Shecho. And then Naje Pacha Shecho, you can Sulu Naje Pacha, what the day you Chengwa, so the Shedo Marba.
So basis refers to the latent proclivity for the afflictions. And if one has a greater amount of imprints of attachment, there'll be a greater amount of attachment. If there's a greater amount of imprints of hatred, there'll be a greater amount of hatred. Greater amount of imprints of pride, there'll be a greater amount of pride. So, Khensur.
What the Tanyomo with Tansa to the Jotala Tanyomo Chigro, Tanyomo with Juchires, Tanyeba, and Neba Mebane, Neba Yomo, Meba Latin Yomochigo, Meba Gandeja Worsana, Mebane. Nyomo bat jewa ta Jesu Tunbi and a Yunhong was Nyomo bat jewa ta Jesu Tunbi Yunhong at what the Yude and Yomo Jude and the Grace. He don't want to all attend the Shachi Marve. He don't want to all attend the Shachiro. He don't want to attend the country Chigro. Tenaji Nyomo Kuruta Tunbi and a Yuden house on Yomo Jengures. He don't want to. And you don't want the child to be 유디 말이다 이동원 통수는 여자 제용 그래서 이동원 돈 여자 제용 말어 이동원 통수는 공주 제용 그래서 녀무 코르도 튀비 유디 상황을 때는 녀무 대단한 제용 그래서 매봐서 어떤 말에
맞아.
매봐네 가서 아등아 주자시라고 두바 여바 마이나 도샤 여바 갈란조 모두 여바 마이나 시당 여바 갈란조스 유 두바 통화도 매나 도샤 지금 말에 모두 통화도 매나 시당 지금 말에 나지 녀모다한테 대단 준비 유 나와도 매나 녀모 지금 말에 what 매봐도 어떤 인사래
Number 2 is object, refers to the appearance of objects conducive to the arising of an affliction. So if we have an object that we see that is attractive, we can have the arisal of attachment. If we have an object that we see that is not attractive or unattractive, or we can use desirous or not desirous also, I've seen. Then if we have see something that's not attractive or not desirous, then we have anger that arises. But we have to have that object of observation there in order for the arisal, because we find in the root wisdom text by Nagarjuna where it states that if there is not the desirous, then attachment can arise, and if there is not the indesirous or that which is not desired, if that which is not desired is not present, then anger or hatred can arise. Similarly, the object refers to the appearance of objects conducive to the arising of an affliction. So that which is attractive or pleasurable gives rise to attachment. That which is found to be not attractive gives rise to anger. This is number 2. Digson. Number 3, social context. Social context refers to the influence of bad friends and foolish people. So we could get into a group of people or a group of friends where they talk a lot of attachment, and then we become attached, or they speak a lot of anger, and then we become more angry. So this is what social context means. It refers to this influence that others have on us. And the examples were speaking of attachment a lot, or speaking of anger a lot. Digson. So number 4 is explanation. Refers to listening to wrong teachings. So listening to wrong things that then increase, or it's almost like almost teaching us to be attached, or teachings that teach us to be attached, or teachings that teach us to be angry. So this is wrong teachings is referring to teachings that make us attached or make us more angry. But it's more like literally like teaching us to be. That's what the teaching is teaching us to be attached, teaching us to be angry. So that's what number 4 is referring to.
Contra comba shechibayana, and the contra shechibayungre, Nyamoto Dante, comba shechibayana, Nyamoto Dante Chingures, they combat the Nyamobaji Jushigres.
Less so. So the next is habituation, refers to the process of being accustomed to the past afflictions. So since beginningless time, we've familiarized ourselves over and over again with attachment, familiarized ourselves over and over again with hatred, and so forth. This process of familiarization with these over and over again is a cause for the arisal of the afflictions. So it's this familiarity is on our mind. So we have this familiarity with it in our minds because of this previous familiarization with it that we've had since beginningless time. So that's number 5.
That Truba do Truba Hila Shebane, do Matuki Tsamala, Dunduba, do Matuki Tsamala Dunduba down, Matabala Taban Zimba, Matabala Taban Zimbala Subi, and Mataba Taban Zimba Su Chimi Jitos, what the Truba Hila Sheba to the Mariba Hila Sheba Takante. And the Chayu, you don't want to sona, and you don't want to be Jusemosan Tansona, and you don't want you say in Debbie, high you don't want Maribe, what the Chachim was Chaji Bomba Mayitan, Union Yawana, Suji Mai Jele, Nomojun Tawais, what the Nomu Judela, Chaji Bomba Mayba, and Union Yawana. Suji Mai is and Doja Ponsan, Doja Jomaro, Nomo Ponsana, Nomo Jomaro, and then Nomo Mabumba Jugres, and then Nomo Yawana Bajugres, and Suji Mai Viji, and then you don't want Jusemo Santan, high you don't want in the Santansuna, and the Suji Mai Viji, but the Latene, Real Nujobanaji. And the Basu de Chachumare. Contra you want Latene, and then what the Yidumo, Jusemo Santana, and the control with the contra Jum with Rotene, Yomoto Dante, Chigi, what the Chima Vigilatene, and Yomojum Gres, what to what do things said?
Yomon Chembo, Yongre, Yomon.
Yomochimota Combachibu, and Yomochi.
Okay, Yomon, okay. Number 6 is attention. Refers to incorrect attention that projects pleasantness onto what has an unpleasant character, conceives an impermanent thing to be permanent, and the like. The 4 erroneous conceptions that mistakenly consider things that are actually permanent, actually impermanent, painful, impure, and lacking a self to be permanent, pleasant, pure, and possessive of a self. When we look at how an affliction arises, or what has to be present for it to arise, there have to be 3 factors. First, one has to have not already abandoned the affliction itself. If there's been a prior abandonment, then the affliction can't arise. But if there hasn't been, then there's a potential for its arisal. The second category is that one has to be within the proximity of or close to that thing that gives rise to that affliction. So that object, one has to be in close proximity to that object that gives rise to it. If it's an attractive object, it gives rise to attachment. If it's a not attractive object, it gives rise to anger or hatred. So it has to be, if it's close to you, then the potential for the arisal of an affliction is there. And then the last category is improper mental conduct. And that improper mental conduct is similar to the point made here in 6. It's where one is thinking of all the reasons why that attractive, that object that one finds attractive is very attractive, and thinking of all these reasons that one would come to the conclusion that it is such a thing, that it is an attractive thing that one then becomes attached to. or that improper mental conduct that thinks over and over again and gives many reasons for it not being attractive, for it being undesirous, and then the arisal of the affliction takes place of hatred or anger once this improper mental conduct is there. So if one hasn't abandoned it already, and if one is close to the object which helps give rise to it, and one has this improper mental conduct, then the affliction can arise. Khensur Rinpoche.
다 제바 녀모비 녀미 데레도 제바 녀모 녀미 가서 자와 사지 넣을 네 담불라 제 녀모 가서 대체다 지rem바 근데 녀모비 주 녀모비 녀미 제 넣네 녀모비 녀미 데레도다 제바 녀모비 녀미
the Jayan Sheba.
Ja, je ba lari sachi.
Lamrim sache.
Lari sachi ne je taki dang ta imba.
Okay.
Tambo la nyomo ji zu le so bi zu ne chibo jo le bi zu los. Tambo nyomo ngo zo wa de tambo la je marbe. Tambo la je nyomo ngo zo wa. Je da ji je ba ni ba je. Oh,
okay. Less so. So now we're in number 4, which is the faults of the affliction. So these are the 4 categories. First, the identification of the afflictions. Second category, the order in which the afflictions arise. The third category, the causes of the afflictions, and then the fourth category, which is the faults of the afflictions. So we've gone through those first 3. Now we're on number 4, faults of the afflictions. The Khensur Rinpoche, Gongam Mepachi.
Oh yeah. Oh, that done.
J'ai pas niemi.
Non, yaba. Tu là, de barendo. Chez eux, so de what delta Jaji Bisachi son de no de tombe te sare tombe de mobudoa ta nyomo bi nyemi sina nyomo bala dene sendel doja yungre jewa shimal doja yungre ne yabu yungumares what de ne ju she de marbe nyomo bi nyemis nyomo bal jun yoware nyomo bal nyemi chebure ne nyomo bad yoba ina ansusul sendel doja yungre sejamal doja yungres what de ge badla nyomo bi nyemis she de marbe tel saji song non ta tombe de ndo
so the Jayan Sheba nyomo bi nyeme ewa sum and tambo se did on the Jewa Shima the ducha don't control okay, so the faults of the afflictions, when we look at number 4 in Jayan Sheva's commentary, it states that there are actually 3 categories here. And the first category is that if you have these afflictions, then in this life, you'll have the arisal of attachment, and you'll have the arisal of anger. And in future lives, you will have the arisal of attachment, and you will have the arisal of anger. So this is the first category, that this harm will come to you because of this in this and next life. So this is category number 1 in Jayan Sheva's commentary.
다 동부도 어떤가 저것도 나리 잡은 나인 조사긴스 녀모바 제바 나스 담보 생군이 녀모바 제바 나스 녀모바 가래 있는 도샤 컨트롤로서 줄 저소나 네 담보 생군이 녀모바 제그레스 생주 마저와 제바 생주도 어때 마저와 제바 셀레지 생주 마저와 제그레스 생구 데버라메 바지용 거저로 마저와 제바탄스 네 메발라 신지로도 셰바다면로 메발라 신지로도 셰바스 메발라 신지로도 셰바 사모들도 가서 와데 녀모이나 로지미 차서야도 데 들산탄디도 메발라 신지로도 셰바스나 타바 드마인 바지로 되게 타발라 신주로도 드른진도 말아 타바 드마인 바지로 되게 타바 제나 신이 말로와 타바 마 드른 제바 인자 타바를 신주로도 드른 거로다 전나지 녀무 가르다 카이나야 유다들라미네 신주로도 징거레스 대인송사 녀무로 로셰 미차는 그래서 타바 드른 로나무 로셰 미차는 그래서 어때 되는 거다
Lesso. So this first, the faults of the afflictions. When an affliction arises, at first it completely afflicts your mind, causing you to err with regard to what you are observing, reinforcing your latent proclivities and causing the same sort of affliction to occur. So if it is an affliction, it is necessarily a mistaken consciousness. So you find why here. It says it causes you to err with regard to what you are observing. So there's a mistake, an error that takes place. So if it's an affliction, it's necessarily a mistaken consciousness, just like the grasping at a rope as being a snake is a mistaken consciousness. There's an error in the perception when one sees a rope as a snake. The errorless perception would be seeing that, grasping at it as a rope itself and not as a snake. But there's an error if you see it as a snake because it's not a snake. Likewise, if there is an affliction, it's necessarily an error. So it's necessarily a mistaken consciousness. Digsung.
다 녀모 바카제 제소나 안네 녀모비 바차 녀모비 잡 바차 네바도 여바로다 대걸 여보 가제 제소나 와테 녀모 바차도 모르다 안네 띵 템버 차는 거스 녀모 바차 템버시 그랬어 녀모 바차 템버시나 달라데네 쳔들 동에 용 그래 네 저와시망에 손을 제거했어 어떤에서도 거지로 바차 템버시 바스
So it reinforces your imprints. So it's when you are when you have this arisal of an affliction, it actually is reinforcing the imprints that are already there, that are similar in nature. So those it makes them stronger and more solid. So it's you have these imprints of all of these attachments. So it's reinforced when you become attached. It reinforces those imprints. And then leaves imprints. And reinforces and leaves imprints.
다 녀모 바자 가세자바 있는 녀모 바자 때는 그러다 말바. 전에 레튠 녀모 마체바시바스 다 노한테 뇌차게 바자 때문에 여바이나 안에 뇌차 천디 뇌차 저와 시민 뇌차 나두근 뇌차 슈두근 뇌차도 그걸로 안에 템버시엔도 네 레튠지 녀모 네 마체바시바스 레튠 뇌차 그걸 뇌차 레튠 말바 뇌차 그걸 뇌차 레튠로 콘도 그걸 콘도 레튠로 뇌차가 바자라 때네 뇌차 레튠비 안에 레튠비 본 뇌차 그걸로 주마시바 지용고레스 주마시바 지용고레 레튠 주마시바 시바스 뇌차가 천디 바자 스시마 바자 안는 천들에 하루 바자 시루 바자 어때 뇌차 그걸로 뇌차 레튠 말바 뇌차 레튠 뇌차가 바자라 때네 레튠 바자 몸을 지용고레 주마시바 지용고레스
So causing the same sort of affliction to reoccur. So by having this arisal of this affliction, you have this reinforcement that takes place of the other afflictions themselves that are like that affliction. So there's a reinforcing that takes place, and then because of this strengthening that takes place, it causes it to reoccur. So it causes the similar affliction within the same class that has a kind of concordance with it to reoccur. So this reinforcement takes place, and then in this life and in future lives we have this reoccurrence of that similar affliction. Because this imprint has been left, this strengthening is taking place, and then this reoccurrence will take place in the future. Deep.
다 되차 바자 뭐여론 되차 바자 수수수수기 리트윙이 녀모도 주마시바지바시거든스 콘리 바자 시저버여나 안 리트윙 콘도 뭐 제용으로스 되차기 바자 네 시저버여나 리트윙 되차 시저버지용으로스 네 나제 어디 바자도 시저버여나 리트윙 나제 시저 녀모가 잡아잡이죠
So it's very similar when you look at all of the different afflictions. If you have this attachment that arises, then it strengthens the things that are those things that are like the same sort of afflictions to attachment to be strengthened and then reoccur. If one has this anger arise, then it causes things that are similar to or the same sort of affliction as angers to reoccur. And then pride, when that occurs, it strengthens and reinforces similar afflictions and then causes a similar affliction to reoccur. So it's the same with all afflictions when we look at the process of their occurrence. Okay, so we'll take a short break and we will be...
What
are we doing? Okay. Let's Okay. So, and another fault of these afflictions is that they harm ourselves and others or both. So, afflictions harm ourselves when attachment or anger arises. They cause this disturbance. They harm ourselves, and when we become attached or angry, the ability is there to harm others. So, this is a fault of the afflictions that we harm so they harm us and they harm others.
Dungeta yime de yongre, Chiwa Shimalaya, and the Dungeta yime de yongres, and the Yomo Wage, and the Nasul Jigre, Nasul Jesuna, Dungeta yime do yongro. Then I should dental chiba inaya, then Dungeta yime do Yomo Benjero, Sendele, Sendeta, Shimanigale, and yime do Karsa, Kanamatua. Kanomato Chivitan Yomobajan was a wager. Chivatane, Dugenda Yimedo Chigres. Send the Shimanigal Kanamato Chibatan Dugenda Yimedo and Yuas. What the Marvel, what the Chilajana?
It may harm you. So we're going to read from the text now, 301, faults of the afflictions. It may harm you, others or both. It leads to misdeeds in this life, in future lives, or in both. The arisal of the afflictions of attachment and hatred and pride lead to non-virtuous deeds in this life, lead to non-virtuous deeds in the future lives. Or in both. It creates experiences of pain and anguish. I think that's where we stop. Or in both. So, That's it. It's just that that the attachment, hatred, pride, all of these things create suffering and pain in this life and in future lives.
Oya nyamu yoba ina odu nyamu oge tene ngasun jiwa la sobe ndo ngemo yungres rubar sheba dans.
So in dependence upon afflictions arise and have a rebirth in the lower realms of cyclic existence, which will cause a great amount of suffering.
Nyandele redo dans ane wad nyamu dege 타바토발 타림 비치그레스 누부 타바토토고 말레스 그 녀모 보비 타바 인자 그 녀모 여나 타바토발 바장리 타린 조가지로 타발 냐데레 렌도 탄스 타바토발 타림 비차노그레스.
Okay, so it creates experiences of pain and anguish. So we have pain and anguish that's created in this life and in future lives, as well as sufferings of birth. So if we're born in the lower realms of cyclic existence, or we're born as a human, we have these sufferings of birth and the like. It takes you far from nirvana. So afflictions make it so that liberation is very far away. They serve to kind of make that destination or make that goal very distant if the afflictions arise. Dixon.
ane gawali nyaba sheba sa wante nyomo yona ane gawadi nyandro ta gawai nyomo bonge ane wate chimbi domba ta rajong domba to sulne ndo wate nyaba shegres nyaba sheba dans ane lonshe le nyaba dans nyomo be onge tene lonshe de susul tene kamba dans monta dans wate nogo yero ta lonshe le nyaba dans tene kuji na do sonwa na ane kuji na do sonwa na yi shongba dans nyomo she cheba yoba yena ane mamu bo yosal ndoba yena sen shongba yongres shongre tragres shongba dans yi shongba dans gawa dans yi madewa ane gawa dans madewa meba dans ane gawa dans yi madewa mebas gawa meba
ane gata
ane menjiba meba yero shina meba menjiba meba jigres shigres.
So your virtue is destroyed and your resources are depleted. So your virtuous deeds that you've created are lessened by the arisal of the affliction. So it actually destroys, has the ability to destroy those virtues you've created. And your resources are depleted. So your enjoyments, your resources, such as your house or your car, or any of the other things that you have, they become less. And then it says, in society you feel apprehensive. When you're around a large group of people, you have this feeling of apprehension. You don't feel comfortable. Joyless, so that means not having any joy, and devoid of confidence. Dixon?
다 수정군도 문예바 표was 수정군도 못 도자래서 기차 도자 저는 그랬어 못이야 보여 말에 못 도자래서 어때 수도 상몽을 어때 기차에 막 쳐는 그랬어 수정군도 문예바 표와다스
이도나가래
어떻게 녀모 이렇게 못 도자를 군도 차지버래 콘도 쳐버려서 안 몸을 카던 거로 말해 수정군도 문예바 쳐봐스 마디아버스 라바는 해봐 쳐봐라 마디아버 말에서 라둘레 근데 문예바 페는 문예바 기차 모용으로 다 표와다스
주상군도 문예바 비두자
문예바 마디아버스는 해봐라
Niepa.
Madujares는 문예바 말보다 어떤 기차 모시게 마두자레 아부 말에서 시행 어떤 뭐 쳐는 기차
Kasakala. Okay. While your notoriety spreads in all directions, an excellent person, your notoriety spreads in all directions. It probably means the same thing. I just must be misusing the word in my mind. But what this means is that bad things about you spread in all directions. So bad things spread about you in the Tibetan. It's so same notoriety. So bad things spread about you in all directions are people who have this attachment or have anger, speak ill of you, and it spread that kind of around about you. Digsung.
What that no what you most what the Tumba Sanjig Dujari Logres, Tumba Dan, Somasu, Tamba, Tambi, Hemba Dansa, Soma to Dujaris, Hegres, and then Tumba the Dujaris Logres, and then Chibutamba Sugar, Dujar Kundusha, Chibu Kundushiburis, what the Hera Tangres, the Kija Dujashi Res.
So an excellent person such as teachers and protectors rebuke you. So you have this great amount of attachment. You have this great amount of anger or hatred. And the protectors know you are bad. Teachers know you are bad. So the summa dan gegen cheran ducha yimba la Lama?
Okay.
Okay. So here it's the protectors say that such a person is bad. The teachers say that such a person is bad. So a person who has this attachment or this anger, the teachers say that type of person is bad. The protectors say that type of person is bad. So that's the meaning of that.
That she's and sensible matters. Judging to Deba Musa Sabason, judging to Shendagres,
Lesser.
Judging to Choa, judging to Choa, Shenan John, and Shenan John, Ganduchins, Shenan what the and the new way that Nora Suman and Rulchin and Luchin, Kankitum, Matuba was a Kankitum, Susan the boy between that Togomare, Yomares.
Okay, so you die with regret, your aims unfulfilled, and after death you are reborn in a miserable realm. So at the time of death you have a very unpleasant mind, you have regret. Those things that you wanted to have happen didn't happen. And then after you die, you're born into among those lower realms of hell, hungry ghost, and animal. So that's what that is meant. What that means there. The Dodajen Lung.
Tan Dodajen, what the Jashamang Dodajen, Dodajen. Sutra Alankara. Dodajen Leo, what the Sombares, and Dodajen cause you attend what in your moon, and then Dodajen Le John. Nyamuna Da Jones, Nyamutu Dal Nogre, Susu Doja Reungres, Da Jones, Sejen Jones, Nyamutu Sejen Jendale Nogres, Jen Jones, and Shooting Jones, and then Yamu Shechabi now there, and Kaso Chimi Dombata Rajing Dombatu.
So here it says, we have now a quote from, it says, furthermore, as the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras says, so this is a text by Lord Maitreya, and it goes categorically under the 5 treatises of Maitreya's doctrine. First, we have the discrimination of phenomena and the nature of phenomena, discrimination of the middle way and extremes, the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, the ornament for clear realization, and then the sublime continuum of the great vehicle. So these are Maitreya's 5 treatises, and this text is one of those 5. And the same points made here that I forgot. Just one point I wanted to go back over. Through afflictions, you destroy yourself, destroy other beings, and destroy your ethical discipline. So here, this is saying that afflictions hurt yourself, afflictions hurt others, and then destroy your ethical discipline. So here, ethical discipline is speaking of those disciplines such as the householder, ethical vows, and those vows for those who have gone forth, become ordained. Let's see, up here, harm others, it leads to misdeeds. So here, it leads to misdeeds in this life and in future lives, and in both. So this is referring to those misdeeds that go against those householder vows, that go against those fully ordained vows, those vows where one has gone forth. That's what I had forgotten to translate. That's where it says it leads to misdeeds. It's referring to creating non-virtue. In terms of those vows. So it connects to this, and destroy your ethical discipline. So it says you destroy yourself, destroy other beings, and destroys your ethical discipline. And then up here it speaks of harms you, others, or both. It leads to misdeeds in this life and future lives. So that was the connecting. And I previously forgot to translate that misdeed was referring to those householder vows that are going forth vows. Digson.
What did Mandu the Jagged long to sing so Nyaji Nyebe Machine, Sultan, the Jintumbi Mess, no Mushina, and Tutina, and what the Suma Duja Logre, the Jintumbi Duja, Tumbagi Duja Log, Tumbi Mess, Maratangres, Yabu Maris Mores, Joba Manye sent to Mahonas, which is, and Joba Maneva, Shuzon go to Maneva Tagres, Matujares, and Joa Shamal and Mahomine, Nima the Tondolos over the Generes, Mahonas, which is Tudamatu Nyabi, Ila Dunge. Chenmo do the Jensi, but do the Jensi, and the Tuba down, Matuba Nyabes, and the Susu Tuga Matuga the Nyabe, and the Hila and Dungachabi what is Chematu, Jason sauce, do the Jen down, but the Taman Matuso, do the Jen Hong Sarwa.
So everything that was presented by Lama Tsongkhapa here above. Is the source of it is the ornament from Mahayana Sutras. So it says through afflictions. So when you have a great amount of attachment or hatred, you destroy yourself, you destroy other beings, and destroy your ethical disciplines. So you harm yourself, harm others, destroy your ethical disciplines, and after you have ruined your joy. You are shunned, your protectors and teachers rebuke you. So those protectors say that you are bad. Those teachers say that you are bad. In your joy, you become joyless. Disreputable, you will be reborn in a leisureless condition. So you will be reborn into the miserable realms, the lower realms. And you suffer great anguish in losing the virtue you have had or yet to attain. So you have this destruction of your virtue that takes place. So we find all of the points in this text by Lord Maitreya made by Lama Tsongkhapa above. So among the three categories Jayan Sheba presents, that is the first.
So
the second one begins with a quote from engaging in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, engaging in Bodhisattva deeds.
Kala lasu yemi las shedang dosha de khunru lasu watuzule kamba da laba yoma res kala lasu shedang sisu shunjule shedang sisu Shedang Sisu Dra Nana, Shedang Sisu Dra, Desha Kondra Sobe, Yomuba to Zangasu Daro Dra, Dra Chumbasana, Yomuba Chumbala Dra Chumbala Horo, Yomuba Tangasu Daris, Dra Ngomatangasu Nagi Dra, Desha Kondra Sobo Tangasu Daris, and then Shedang Sisu Dra Nanes, Yomuba Dra Nane, Kala Lasu Yemilas, or Kosul Kamba de la Batteria Mares.
That's so.
And 班长没有，继续到是吧？那没些的轮我的也不通不多。
The Khensur Chambo Yumare.
啊，
The
那班
Gatsu de
长
Dra, the Shedang Dan Ducha.
班长没有，
Local Chambo
继续
Yomare.
到这，这到给咱们人些，这到给到真人些啥？Desha Kondra Sobe Dra to Sol Kamba de la Batteria Mares.
That's so.
네, 반장 대바들 말에대 나 고수 수수 나수도 고수인데 너무 요분나 버렸어.
That's so.
네, 대샤도 콘을 가르쳐서 나가서 대원하던 그랬어. 너무 지원하던 그랬어.
That's so.
네, 반장 매야 지지 따라 대다기 다른 진실 다도 어때 너무 요분나지. 나가서 뇌차가 정화도 그래 콘도 정화도 그래 나제가 정화도 그래 차도 정화도 그래
맞아.
현대시 다기 생라 내진도 강고 달라 뇌실라스 다기 생라
Dagi Senla Nation do.
Senle, Desha Kondra Yoma was on Asu Sen Nediores, Gangu Dala, Nobashes, Gangu Dala, what the Mazudal Nobashes, Tella Matro, Zobane, Nemi. Maybe Ness. Control Lana as the shadow control your mole control hours. Tell a control Malana what the maybe net is, maybe net. Those are channels. Tell a metro, Zoba, the new mole Zoba Jebaina.
Yeah.
Ne Maris.
Yapio Mare.
Zoba. And Zoba maybe Ness. Nyamul Zoba Gomba, the maybe net Doja is.
That's so.
Maybe that is. What about the Kaleka Judah?
That's so do. Then Rinpoche, the Toga, the Dagi Senla Nation do. The Injike, the Natsu Nyomon, the Jamu Yomare, Natsu Nyomon, the local Chembo Yomare, Lapa Yomare, Gamba Yomare, the local Chembo Yomare, Jamo Yomare, Yene Natsu Tongkang Dan Drapudu.
Natsu Sen Net yours, Yomud, Dag Sen Nation do.
Then they don't die.
And Yomud Susen Yodro, Sen Olu Yomu Yodro. Sen Olu Yomu, Sen Olu Yormatu, Sen Shulu Yomaro, Yomu, Sen Shidaro, Sen Net Yoro.
Bless her.
Dag Sen Nation do Ganguru Dala Nebashi, Gangu Sen Nation do. And the Susu Gawal never jigger, and then what the Sule, and what the Sulnum is.
Rasa.
Sala Nation to Gangu Dala Nurse was.
The doggy does.
Susu Gabi over the Numu no Gawam Magawa Dugan Gurota. Dala Nurse was. Tell a much Zoba name is control on the Yamul control on Gores. Tell a much Yamul Zoba Combate.
Okay.
And the name is.
That's so.
Name me. And Zoba happiness. Yamula Zoba Combate, Zoba Dujaris. Yamul Zoba Conjumares.
That's so.
Happiness. What is it?
Enemies such as hatred and craving have neither feet nor hands and are neither brave nor intelligent. And then how then have they enslaved me? So when we look at the word arhat, foe destroyer, that word foe is the same word here, enemies. That is a being who has destroyed that foe. So here it's saying that the real enemy is hatred, the real enemy is attachment. And it says, even though this enemy, these afflictions, they don't have hands, they don't have feet, they don't have, it says brave nor intelligent. Rinpoche's reading it a little bit differently, saying that they don't have hands or feet, they're in my mind. How then have they enslaved me? So just the meaning is reading a little different. I don't have time to go through each word right at this moment, but the way Rinpoche's explaining it, it's more like, they don't have hands or feet, they're in my mind. They're made up in my mind. They're part of my mind. These afflictions, these hatreds, they're just in my mind. And then, if that being so, how am I a slave to them? How have they put me into this jail? Almost like how if they're in my mind, did they put me into this place, this enslavement? And then it says, while they dwell within my mind, they are pleased to do me harm. They are not to be endured without anger. Tolerance of them is ridiculous. So this tolerance, the word is for patience. So having patience with these afflictions is very bad. It's very bad to have patience for the afflictions. We should be angry at them. It says they are not to be endured without anger, because they are pleased to do me harm. So we shouldn't be patient with them. We should be angry at them and want to destroy them, want to get rid of them. Diksan Rinpoche.
Gede Lhadan Lami na Kanji Dal Dalang Lhadan Mata Sama Susul Dalang ba Inaya.
Leso.
And then Susunyal Chitu Maris. Lhadan Mata Sama Susul Dalang ba Ina.
Leso.
And then Nyawal Chitu Maris.
Seldu.
Nyomo Bata Jusheval Ten Watangasu Nyawal Chiatu Nyomungshi.
Leso.
Nyomuto Chin Dande ne Nyomuto Chin Dande ne Kantan Chena Rarajan and Rarajan Tawa Yan Irbe Tawa Yan Di She Tada Geji Jilan Doros, Dagiji Jilan Doros, Nyomobi Watage, and Nyawala Sovaja, Nyomogi Water, and then Nyomuta Dogores. What is on this? Nyomonto
Chen.
Drandes. Nyomotochen Dandege, what in Azunyal Chia, Nyawa that rule jet, what the Nyomobi Dogamo Nyomushi that is.
Even if all the deities and demigods should rise up as my enemies, they cannot lead me or force me into the fires of unrelenting hell. So even if all of these gods, demigods, became my enemy, they couldn't lead me into hell. The only thing that can lead me into the unrelenting hell is my true enemy, which are my afflictions, my anger, my attachment. These are the things that lead me into hell. There's no external enemy that can do so. So that's the point being made here.
What the Nyomoto Dandine and Dandine Kandatena Rojang and Tawa Yandi Tawa Yan the Malubasa Tawa Yan the Maluba, the Nyomoto Jimores. Tadaki Jilandos, what the Lee Susan, Nyomo Batal Chun, the Lee by Susan, Nyomo Nyalchia, Dalchia, Dungan Yoga Inza, and the Nyomo Bat Jesona, and the Chachagadu, Kundu 10, just one Keji Jilandors, Jagures, Keji Jilandoro, Dagi Nyomo, Daukan, Dagi Nyomo Daukan, Sudi Zod Nyomodron, Dagi Nyomo Daukan. And during
Tota Meba
Tota Meba Dag in your Mudawunde Joa Toma Maban Kuyores,
Okay. Ale.
Dagenemo Dawkan, Turimbo, Toma the Tama Mabane, what the Yomodi was, Toma Mabatar, Jajan Gujan, Jajan Gujan, Tetabo, Jajan Gujan, Tetabo, and Yuri, Tuba Mainos, Yomo Jali, Jambi, Jajenda, Suji, what the Yomo Jana, Nobody to Mares, Yuri, Tuba Mainos.
Tuma mepa.
What the Dagana Doja, Yomo Bidata Doja Jegre, Yomo Bidata to what the Yomo Bidnobatia and Jetu Mares.
Lesso.
Tumba Rendu Tenshina Tanji Pendler.
Tumba Rendu
Dejina.
Tamche Pendang Dejina. Nyomo nam ne denjena jishing dungyo nubache. Lesso. But this powerful enemy, the afflictions, casts me in an instant into fire so hot that if they met even Mount Meru, not even ashes would remain. Here it's saying that the real enemy, my afflictions, is what could bring me into a fiery hell that is so hot that it says ashes wouldn't even remain after my body was cast into these fires. And then it says the enemy, that is my afflictions, has lasted a long time without beginning or end. No other enemy has the power to last for such a long time. So these enemies, these afflictions that are my enemies, last much longer than any other kind of enemy could. Even an external enemy doesn't have the ability to abide. Here it says, without beginning, has lasted a long time without beginning or end. So we don't have this beginningless influence with an external enemy. And then it says, given appropriate service and attention, everyone helps you and makes you happy. But if you serve your afflictions, they only inflict further suffering.
Oh, that was the Juju with the Yomul data to Yomu Doja, Yomu Natu Dades, Doja, Yomu, Yomul data, Chesumba, Yemina, Sheba Shawos, Shunju Lusum, Yomu Yemi, Yomu Jun, or the Sukashi, Sheba Shawores, Germachote, Tabado, Sajini Batre.
So the second category shows how the afflictions have this negativity, have these faults. And the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life compares our afflictions to an enemy and shows how they are very bad and have these kinds of faults as listed by example in Shantideva's text. So this is the second category according to Jayan Sheba. So the faults in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Okay, so now we find out that the afflictions are very bad, they are our enemy, and then because of this, we will want to abandon them, we will want to eliminate them. So then this becomes category number 3, where we find a point made that's in accordance with Gombawa. So it begins to eliminate afflictions. So once we recognize that they're bad, they're our enemy, and what the ability that they have, the potential that they have, like the potential that they have to create a negative result, parentheses, to create a negative result, then we want to get rid of them. So that's number 3, is the elimination of the afflictions. So you must have an understanding that accords with what Gonbawa said. Diksun.
What the new movie never did to Kadampa Gishin, Gumba Gumba into the Sombares.
So this is a Kadampa master, Gombawa, So it's saying that the Kadampa master Gombawa states this.
ponto maro nyamo nyabo to karime shego nyabo to datuni to bishara yirwada nyabo ta ji juna sheba shegos ta nyamo ji jo nyamo ji juna nyamo ji jo dalatene ane troje so oto to ga shego res madon marba nyamo ji juna shegos jo to so pala nyala soba shegures nyeme sheba shene ne nyeme sheba shene judo tas nyomo be nyeme shene nyomo la judo ta ures
lasa
nyomo drazon ures drazon
lasa
nyeme ma shena dramagoyes nyomo be nyeme data jen nogo de machina
lasa
nyomo de drayema de kogomares
lasa
mogu do de jenta shunju ne o de taman she ja ngal ma donja do
lasa
do de jen le son batan shunju ne son batar samba yin son batan o gai shi kadam gi shi gomba yu ne nyomo be yeme de shunju da do de jen le son batan nyalen je ba yin
lasa
ne nga so den na je go son de je che
lasa
yin son batan nyomo ji tseni shebalaya nyomo ji tseni shebalaya chungaba nya wurs chungaba ne ngoba kuntu ta ngoba ju wa tu nyomo na ja mo yodro chungaba nya wures mata na ya na pomunga iroji beji pebi pomunga iroji ni la sa ne tsawa ta ni nyomo ba na Moshe shene ne chadang la suba karu ju la chetan na den de ti kon jong nya do gon ge nyomo ta thaba yino she song ba ta ko go ba yinos ta je mo jo te mar da ma de o de ta gomba wa de nyomo be nyebe ta su to ho de shunju ta ndo de jen so ba na ji nyale ji che ba yin son do ta na ji nga su nyale ji ko son din sa mar ba
lasa to eliminate so you must have an understanding that accords with Gombawa, so that's the Kadampa master Gombawa. To eliminate afflictions, you must know the afflictions' faults, their characteristics. So their characteristics is the definition. The word we usually the word definition for tsini. So it says their faults. So we've looked at all the various faults. We've looked at the definitions. So we have the general definition of an affliction, and then we have the specific definitions of an affliction. Their remedies. So we look at how one gets rid of the afflictions and the causes for their arising. So then we have the 6 causes that we went over for that have to be there for the arisal of the afflictions. And we went over already these faults of the afflictions in this section that we're under right now with the 3 categories. It says, after you have recognized their faults, regard them as defective and consider them your enemies. And so as we previously just looked at the top here, we had the quote from Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where Shantideva points out that the afflictions are our enemies. If you do not recognize their faults, you will not understand they are our enemies. Therefore it is said that you should reflect on this, following following what is said in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras and engaging in bodhisattva deeds. So again, Geshe Rinpoche is used as his source, Maitreya's ornament for Mahayana Sutras and Shantideva's engaging in bodhisattva deeds to explain this section, to show the faults of the afflictions, the definitions of the afflictions, and how the afflictions are our enemies. And then it says, and also study Vasubandhu and Asanga's text on knowledge as well in order to understand the characteristics of the afflictions or the definitions of the afflictions. At least study Vasubandhu's explanation of the 5 aggregates. Once you know the root and secondary afflictions, then when any attachment, hostility, or such arises in your mind stream, you can identify it thinking, this is that, now it has arisen, and fight the affliction. So that's all that. Less so.
Nibatel nyomu jata wur shunju de mara shunju de zwa somba de shi kadam gishin de ge do de jen da shunju sonja ma dun do du jen ma don sonja de remde somba de rendwa jaje saji son jiwa de rendwa.
So these 3 categories of Jayan Sheva. First we find the categories of points that are made in the ornament for Mahayana Sutras by Lord Maitreya. Then we find the points that are made by Shantideva in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And then we find the 3rd section is kind of a condensed summary of those points made by Gombawa. So these are the 3 categories according to Jayan Sheva. Indeed so. So today I don't have my glasses. Mikshe Jendago?
Forgot.
Oh, yeah, forgot. Different glasses then. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. I forgot my glasses last class. It's a trend. Sala pralang e mikshe Jason.
Yeah.
Kali kabudu. So the fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, exceptional wisdom and perseverance, Tuji